Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So I guess I'll start this video off by saying I apologize for my brief hiatus. I graduated college and got myself a job and moved to a new city, so there's been a lot going on outside of my personal projects, but it's great. Having an income is awesome, and we're back. So yeah, I guess elephant in the room, I picked up a couple new projects here, so I will formally introduce you guys to those and explain the plan with them in a future video, but for now, the Dodge is no longer my only money pit. So yeah. And aside from that, I did want to mention before we get going on this video that we are going to be trying out a little bit of a different video format. I don't like my first videos how there's too much raw audio when I'm trying to talk and show you guys stuff. So I'm going to try to do things in a way that we don't get that awful audio. So it's probably going to be more voiceovers and time-lapse kind of footage. And we might do shorter segments of me talking directly to the camera as I go. You know, if I make a mistake and want to highlight it, or if I do something really smart and want to highlight it. So just bear with me. I know my first few videos were kind of crap, but we're working on it. So current project. So I'm making, well, I guess I'll preface, I will give you some context. To celebrate being done with college and having an income and all those wonderful things, we decided that we wanted to upgrade the roof tent. The one we had, that Tepui, that was like a $700 marketplace find, and it was great as kind of a proof of concept that we both liked it, we both slept well in it, and I didn't mind wheeling with it on the truck. So now that we know we like them, we sold that one, and I got myself a new roof tent. It's a Free Spirit Recreation Aspen, the one that Talon Side helped co-develop. So I liked everything I saw about it. We picked it up. We already had it open out on the lawn and checked it out. But it is longer than the bed of the Dakota, so I need a new rack so that it can sit up higher above the cab, you know, kind of like a Go Fast or any of those other wedge types. So here we go. I have removed the Dakota's bed rack that you guys watched me fabricate before. That is going to go on this truck. I will explain that one maybe in a future video, maybe in this video. We'll see. Might be a double whammy on the racks. But for the Dakota, I am going to be making this. If you can, I'm not sure if you can see it. That. So this, for carrying the tent, the Dakota's rack was very strong and I liked it. Did what it needed it to do, and even with really bad welds, like realistically those welds sucked, but they all held. So it was a good rack for what I needed it to do. But whenever I had to put something in the bed of the truck or access like my high lift or my fuel cans or whatever, anything that I had back there, it was a nightmare because obviously I wasn't going to take the rack off and I couldn't access the bed with it. Couldn't get in from the side because there was that center support, and I couldn't get in from, you know, it was too short. I couldn't get in the bed with or without the tent on it. I just hit my head on stuff. So the new plan is I'm going to make two of these structures here. Don't know if you can, two of these, okay? One of them will be a headache rack, and that will just permanently stay on the truck. And I'll have my backup camera mounted on there, and I'll have my, you know, some lighting on there, and that's permanent. That is on the truck long term, whether or not the tent's on there. And then there's a second one of these that I bent and welded. That'll be at the very end, right in front of the tailgate. That one will support the tent when it's on, but it'll also be removable. My hope with this is that I can have access to the bed from either side, so I can get into my shovel and my high lift and my toolbox and all that. And this is, this is beefier material. This is 2" by 3" square tube. The other rack was 1" by 2" C-channel. So same thickness, but dimensionally it got a lot bigger, and we gained 4 sides instead of 3 on the, So I'm hoping that this increase in strength makes up for the fact that I won't have a hoop in between the front and the rear. It'll just be 2. The downside to that is I can't do any triangulation between the hoops because I need them to come off and sit flat against the wall when I'm not using the tent on the Dodge. So my way around that, and I hope it works, I ordered just laser cut, send cut send, a big plate. So kind of like a rack you would buy, how they have those plates on the side and people like to mount max tracks on them. I'm gonna do a plate that runs from the front to the rear, hopefully set it high enough that I can still kind of duck in and reach into the bed from the sides, but I'm hoping that gives enough structure that the 2 hoops here are not gonna move independent of each other. And then of course the tent on top will give them some rigidity. So here's hoping. Yeah. As for what I've done so far, literally just took a look at my CAD model and took these angles off of it, cut them out and bent and welded. That's all I've done so far. So I just got done scuffing up the surfaces on all my parts. You can see there. I decided to try most of my surface prep for paint before welding stuff together when I can still get at everything pretty easily. Didn't record it because it's just going at it with a bunch of sandpaper and my wire wheel and the drill. So kind of boring, kind of tedious, but hopefully the paint will adhere better. The last thing we need to do before I start piecing together the headache rack and such is actually a roof rack. Sorry about that. Okay. This is something I didn't record building. It was a really slow back burner kind of project for the better part of a year now, because I wasn't sure how I wanted to do it, how I wanted to mount it. So what we're doing, I had like a whole basket thing going, but I cut off the mounts for the uppers, and we are just going to do a low profile flat rack. For this, I'm going to just weld some short segments of tube on with a flat plate for feet, and hopefully that doesn't leak too bad. But the last thing, so the last thing I need to do for the rack is cut some segments of this strip for feet and a couple 1.5 inch lengths of this for legs. Then I can weld those to the rack, and then we can mock up the rack's height off the roof of the truck, which will determine how high the headache rack needs to be so the tent can clear and not interfere with the rack as the frame flexes going over stuff. So that is the plan for today. Well, for, I don't know, the next couple hours. So I just came out in the garage to start my work today, and I realized I messed up pretty good. So I got some B-roll footage I'll overlay. Basically, when I notched and bent two hoops for the the headache rack and then the rear support. I bent them, tack welded them, and test fit them on the bed of the truck. And then I finish welded them. And after I finished welded them, I did not check that they were still, things warp and shrink a little bit when you weld them. And I never went and put those back up on the truck. And I really should have. So the front hoop, the headache rack, will work. It'll be I don't know, ½ inch or so narrower than I wanted, but it'll work. The rear hoop is about a full inch narrower than the minimum. So I have to cut some of my welds and unbend that, bend it back out a little bit. You'll see in the footage I took of it, you'll see one side matches up with the headache rack perfectly. The other side is just bent too far in. So what I'm going to do is just tackle it from one side, where I'll cut off the welds to the gusset, and then I'll notch it a little bit, bend it back, and hopefully it won't be too huge of a gap to fill with the gusset.
To get the rack to sit level on the bed, I used my line laser to help mark where to cut. With a little creativity, this is a super useful tool that I think every garage fabricator should have and figure out how to use. I set it up and positioned the rack member so that the laser crossed both outside corners at the bottom of the rack. And once it's positioned like that, you can just draw a straight line, follow the laser across both sides. And if you cut along that line cleanly, then the rack will sit level after that excess material is cut off. Since the gussets were already welded on and everything was finish welded already on the rear hoop, cutting the welds at one of the corners and bending that hoop back a few degrees was just not really an option. It would have been too much work, cooked through too many grinder discs. I wasn't willing to do it. So the solution we decided on was to just cut the rack in half in the middle, cut a spacer out of the extra material we had, and weld it in. Since my girlfriend was the one that pitched the idea, I had her do some of the welding on this part. Then we also cut a couple small squares of just flat plate steel to lap weld over the butt weld on both sides of the rack. We just did this to help improve strength because butt welds generally are not the strongest joint configuration, and I didn't have the right size material on hand to sleeve the joint internally.
All right, as you can see, we got both hoops, all the little details on them finished, and we got it mounted up on their feet on the truck. And I actually finish welded everything around the base on the truck to minimize any warping while the part's cool. I want my bolt holes for these feet to still line up.
I did have to change the orientation of these sub-members on the headache rack part of the assembly. These members are made from 2" by 1" rectangular tube, and I had originally wanted the 2" sides to be the top and bottom, but I just thought it would look better that way. When I test fit everything, though, the toolbox in the bed of the truck wouldn't open all the way, so I ended up having to rotate those sub-members so that the 1" sides were at the top and bottom, and that allowed the toolbox to function properly without any issues.
I just got done welding for today. I'll throw up some footage as I talk here, but I got the entire headache rack welded up, and I have the whole rear hoop welded up with gussets, and we figured out the width problem. We just cut it in the middle, added an inch of width, and then welded it. Butt welded it, and then laid some plate strips over it so that it's not just a butt weld holding weight. Looks pretty sturdy, feels pretty sturdy. I don't expect problems. It's just a 110-pound roof tent that it's got to hold. I got holes drilled through the headache rack and the rear hoop so that I can drop in little pegs that when I go for a steel yard run, that I can put long pieces of tube or whatever up top, and those will stop them. It's just like a proper headache rack. They have to be removable so that the tent can lay on there. The only thing I have left to do before I can paint these is my design called for, in between the headache rack and the rear hoop, a big plate that I was going to bolt through. So, like I said before, my goal with this was that the headache rack is a permanent fixture on the truck, and the rear hoop and whatever supporting stuff is removable and can sit flat against a wall when I'm not using it, when the tent's on the Ranger or whatever. So to that end, I couldn't just weld supports in between the two hoops. They have to be removable, bolt on. So I ordered send, laser cut. It was like 8 or 10 inch tall by the whole length of the bed, and I'm gonna do a bunch of dimple dies in them. Those haven't come in yet, but when they do, I will have to drill and sleeve 8 more holes between the two hoops.